Captain Ethan Wright sat in his command chair on the bridge of the USS Solitude, his eyes fixed on the vast darkness of space displayed on the main screen. The ship hummed quietly around him, a comforting sound after 15 years of service. In the Terran fleet, the Solitude was not the biggest ship in the fleet, but with its crew of 35, it was perfect for patrol and exploration missions along the border of human space. Lisa Reeves monitored the communication channels at her station, her fingers occasionally tapping on the console as she adjusted frequencies. The ship's artificial intelligence, which everyone called Soul, continuously scanned the surrounding area for any unusual activity. "Anything interesting today, Soul?" Captain Wright asked, leaning back in his chair. "Negative, Captain," the AI responded. In a calm voice, "All sectors show normal activity patterns." Security Chief Alan Dorsey yawned and stretched his arms above his head. He had been on duty for nearly 8 hours, and the quiet shift was making him drowsy. "Another boring day in deep space," he said. "Sometimes I wonder why we patrol so far from home when nothing ever happens out here." Captain Wright turned to look at his security chief. "That's exactly why we patrol, Alan, to make sure nothing does happen." The bridge crew nodded in agreement. Everyone knew the stories from the early days of human space exploration, before the current protocols were established. Those were dangerous times when humans traveled in groups and attracted unwanted attention from various alien species. "Captain," Lisa called out suddenly, her voice rising slightly with concern. "Soul is detecting some unusual energy readings. At coordinates 227 Mark 43, Wright straightened in his chair. On screen, the main view screen shifted to show a section of empty space. To an untrained eye, there was nothing unusual to see, but Wright noticed the subtle distortion patterns that indicated cloaked vessels. "Soul, run a full spectrum analysis," he ordered. "Analysis complete," Soul announced after a moment. 3 vessels detected. Configuration matches known Vexori Raider signatures. The bridge crew tensed. The Vexori were notorious pirates who preyed on isolated ships throughout this sector of space. They were reptilian beings known for their aggression and advanced cloaking technology. What made this situation particularly unusual was that the Vexori had never attacked a human ship before. "They're decloaking," Alan reported. His earlier sleepiness completely gone, 3 ships appeared on the screen, their dark hulls shaped like the manta rays from Earth's oceans. They moved into a formation that would prevent the Solitude from escaping. "They're hailing us," Lisa said, her fingers steady despite the tension that filled the bridge. Captain Wright nodded. "Put them through." The screen changed to show the interior of the lead Vexori ship. A reptilian figure stood in the center, its greenish scales gleaming under harsh lights. The Vexori commander had vertical pupils and yellow eyes and a ridge of spikes running from the top of its head down its back. "Human vessel," the Vexori spoke in a raspy voice that the translation system rendered into English. "Your isolation will be your downfall. Surrender your ship and cargo, and we might allow your crew to live." Wright kept his expression neutral. Years of diplomatic training had taught him to hide his emotions during first contact situations, even hostile ones. "This is Captain Ethan Wright of the USS Solitude. You are approaching a Terran fleet vessel without permission. Disengage and retreat immediately." The Vexori commander made a sound that the translation system interpreted as laughter. "1 ship against 3? Your human arrogance is truly legendary. Now you will learn why traveling alone is weakness." The screen went dark as the Vexori cut the transmission. "They're charging weapons," Alan reported. Captain Wright pressed a button on his chair. "All crew battle stations, this is not a drill." He then turned to Alan. "Activate Protocol Nemesis." Alan's face paled slightly, but he nodded and moved to a special panel on the side of the bridge. The panel required both his and the captain's biometric authorization to unlock. Inside was a series of controls that were not part of the standard ship operations. Throughout the ship, the crew responded to the alert with practiced efficiency. In engineering, Nicole Harrison led her team in securing critical systems and preparing emergency power reserves. The calm with which they worked might have seemed strange to an outside observer. There was none of the panic one might expect during a surprise attack. In the medical bay, Dr. Gregory Nash opened a secure cabinet and removed several specialized kits marked with biohazard symbols. His assistant, Nurse Patrick Kelly, began preparing the isolation ward according to established protocols. "How bad do you think it will get?" Patrick asked quietly as they worked. Dr. Nash checked a series of vials containing a milky substance. "Depends on how much they resist. But Protocol Nemesis isn't designed to be gentle." Back on the bridge, Alan had finished the authorization sequence. "Countermeasures ready, Captain. Phase 1 can be initiated at your command." "Deploy," Wright ordered without hesitation. Outside the ship, microscopic particles began to emit from hidden vents along the Solitude's hull. These particles were invisible to standard sensors and drifted toward the Vexery vessels. Carried by the solar wings and the ship's own minimal propulsion, the lead Vexery ship fired. An energy beam struck the Solitude's shields. The ship shuddered. But the shields held. "Shields at 87%, Alan reported. "They're preparing to fire again." Lisa turned from her console. "Sir, they're also launching boarding pods. 2 ships are moving to flank us while the lead vessel maintains weapons lock." Captain Wright nodded calmly, as expected. "Seal all critical sections and activate internal defenses. All crew to designated Nemesis stations." Nicole Harrison arrived on the bridge, slightly out of breath from running. "Containment systems are ready, Captain. The package is primed and distribution has begun." "Good work," Wright said. "Now we wait." The ship rocked again as more weapons fire struck the shields. Alerts sounded as boarding pods attached themselves to the outer hull of the lower decks and began cutting through. Captain Wright opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. Remember your training. This isn't just about our survival, it's about ensuring this never happens to another human vessel. Nemesis protocols are now fully active." Throughout the ship, crew members moved to predetermined positions. Some sealed themselves in protected areas, while others positioned themselves strategically near the expected entry points. All of them carried small devices that monitored their vital signs and connected to the ship's medical systems. In the lower decks, the first breach alarm sounded as Vexery raiders cut through the hull. The invaders were met with only token resistance from automated defense systems, far less than they had expected from a military vessel. On the bridge, Captain Wright watched the internal sensors as the Vexery spread throughout the lower sections of the ship. His expression remained calm, almost resigned. "They're advancing faster than expected," Alan noted. "Security teams report minimal engagement as ordered." "Good," Wright replied. "The less our people fight, the more confident the Vexery will become." Lisa looked concerned. "Sir, they'll reach critical areas within minutes at this rate." That's exactly what we want," the captain said. "The faster they spread throughout the ship, the faster Nemesis takes effect." Nicole checked her tablet, which displayed various ship systems. "Ventilation systems are circulating as planned. Environmental controls show optimal conditions for dispersal." Captain Wright nodded and watched the display showing the Vexery life signs moving through his ship. Their biosigns were strong and steady for now. "And now," he said quietly, "they learn why human ships always travel alone." Ship engineer Nicole Harrison ran through the corridors of the Solitude as red lights flashed along the walls and ceilings. The alarm sounds were not loud and panicky, but rather a steady, pulsing tone that matched the rhythm of the flashing lights. Unlike what might be expected during a surprise attack, the crew moved with calm precision to their assigned stations. Many of them had served on border patrol ships for years and had trained for this exact scenario, though few had ever needed to implement Protocol Nemesis in a real situation. Nicole reached a sealed door marked "Engineering Control, Authorized Personnel Only," and placed her hand on the scanner. The door slid open, revealing a room filled with screens and control panels. 3 other engineers were already at their stations, monitoring various systems. "Status report," Nicole demanded as she took her position at the main console. "All systems functioning within parameters," said Ben Rogers, the youngest engineer on the team. "The package is distributing through all designated channels." Nicole nodded and checked her own screens. Small dots representing microscopic particles were shown spreading throughout the ship's ventilation system, especially concentrated in the areas where the Vexery raiders had breached the hull. The Nemesis protocol was working exactly as designed. In the medical bay, Dr. Gregory Nash and Nurse Patrick Kelly had finished preparing the isolation ward. They were now checking specialized equipment that was rarely used during normal ship operations. Several crew members had reported to medical as ordered, and Dr. Nash was giving them final instructions. "Remember, some of you will experience mild symptoms," he explained to the group. "This is normal and expected. Your genetic modifications will protect you from the worst effects, but you may feel like you have a mild case of the flu. Report any unexpected symptoms immediately." A young woman raised her hand. "Dr. Nash, what about the Vexery? How quickly will they be affected?" "Based on previous testing with similar species, we expect them to show the first signs within 20 to 30 minutes of exposure," Dr. Nash replied. "Full effect should be achieved within 2 hours." Meanwhile, on the lower decks, the Vexery raiders moved through the ship with growing confidence. Their initial caution had given way to boldness as they encountered minimal resistance. Their leader, a battle-scarred warrior named Krostak, directed his troops from just inside the breach point. "Secure the engine room and find their control center," he ordered a group of raiders. "I want their navigation data and weapon systems." A younger Vexery named Vexinar approached his commander. "Sir, we found several crew members hiding in the storage areas. They offered no resistance." "Bring me their leader." Krostak ordered. 2 raiders dragged a human woman wearing a Science Division uniform before Krostak. Her name tag identified her as Olivia Sanders, Chief Science Officer. What struck Krostak as odd was the woman's appearance. Her skin looked slightly gray, and there were beads of sweat on her forehead. A thin line of blood ran from her nose. Yet she did not seem frightened. "Human," Krostak said, leaning close to her face. "Where is your captain? Where are your ship's defenses?" Olivia looked at him with bloodshot eyes. "Protocol Nemesis was activated the moment you threatened our ship," she said in a calm voice. "There's nothing you can do now." "What is this protocol you speak of?" Krostak demanded, grabbing her arm. "The reason human ships travel alone," she replied, coughing slightly. A few droplets of blood sprayed from her mouth. "We're not isolated because we're weak. We're quarantined because of what?" "We carry." Krostak pushed her away, suddenly uncertain. "Take her to the ship," he ordered his warriors. "Our scientists will question her further." On the bridge of the Solitude, Captain Wright monitored the situation through the ship's internal sensors. The Vexery life signs were moving throughout the lower decks, but he noted with satisfaction that they were beginning to move more slowly. "Sir," Lisa reported from her communications station, "the Vexery are returning to their ships with some of our crew members, as expected," Wright replied. "How many of our people have they taken?" "5 so far, including Chief Science Officer Sanders," Lisa said, checking her screen. "All of them were stationed in the predetermined exposure zones." Alan looked up from his security console. "Captain, the Vexery vital signs are starting to fluctuate." "The first phase of Nemesis appears to be taking effect," Wright nodded. "Maintain current ship status. Let them continue to think they have the upper hand." On the lead Vexery vessel, confusion was spreading among the crew. Several of the raiders who had boarded the human ship were showing strange symptoms. Their normally green scales were taking on a grayish tinge, and many were reporting dizziness and difficulty breathing. The ship's medical officer examined one of the affected warriors. "I've never seen anything like this," he reported to his captain. "Their vital functions are declining rapidly, and I cannot identify the cause." Krostak felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. He turned to look at the human prisoners they had brought aboard. All 5 were showing similar symptoms: gray skin, bloodshot eyes, and occasional coughing with traces of blood. Yet they remained calm, almost resigned to their condition. "What have you done?" he demanded of Olivia Sanders. She looked at him with eyes that now had small spots of blood in the whites. Every human ship carries a modified pathogen, she explained, in a weak voice. It's engineered to target non-human physiologies while being relatively harmless to us. We're all vaccinated and genetically modified to resist it. You're saying your ships are all plague carriers? Krostek asked in disbelief. We travel alone to protect others, Olivia corrected him. Unless we're attacked, then the isolation protects only us. Krostek turned away from her, a growing sense of dread filling him. He activated the communication system to contact the other raider ships. The faces that appeared on his screen showed the same confusion and fear that he was feeling. Our warriors are falling ill, reported the captain of the second ship. Whatever this is, it's spreading rapidly. We've lost contact with nearly a third of our boarding party. The humans, Krostek said grimly, they carry some kind of biological weapon. Recall all remaining warriors immediately and prepare to leave this area. Back on the Solitude, Captain Wright received an urgent message from the lead Vexery ship. When he activated the view screen, Krostek's face appeared. The Vexery commander looked distinctly unwell, with dulled scales and sunken eyes. Human captain, Krostek said, his voice raspy. What have you done to us? I warned you to disengage, Wright replied calmly. Protocol Nemesis is our last line of defense, activated only when our ship is directly threatened. Your people are infected too, Krostek pointed out. No, Wright corrected. My crew experiences mild, temporary symptoms at worst. For you, without treatment, the effects will be much more severe. Krostek's eyes narrowed despite his obvious discomfort. You would unleash a plague weapon on us? You would attack an isolated ship that posed no threat to you, Wright countered. We travel alone for a reason, Krostek. Now you know why? Nicole entered the bridge and handed the captain a datapad. The pathogen has reached optimal distribution. Levels throughout all 3 Vexery ships, she reported. Their life support systems are now circulating it efficiently. Captain Wright nodded and turned back to the screen. You have a choice to make, Commander Krostek. Continue this attack and face the consequences, or retreat and tell others what you've learned about human ships. Krostek stared at the human captain for a long moment before responding. This is not over, human, he said finally, ending the transmission. The 3 Vexery ships slowly began to move away from the Solitude, their movements less coordinated than before. Captain Wright watched them go, his expression somber. Do you think they've really learned their lesson? Lisa asked. Quietly, they will, Wright replied. Because the real education is just beginning. Vexery Commander Krostek struggled to maintain his composure as he sat in the command chair of his ship. The room seemed to spin around him, and his vision blurred every few minutes. Around him, his crew was in even worse condition. Some warriors lay on the floor, unable to stand, while others clung to their stations with weakened grips. The proud Vexery raiding party that had so confidently attacked the human vessel now fought simply to remain conscious. Status report, Krostek demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. His second-in-command, a veteran warrior named Shrell, stepped forward unsteadily. All 3 ships report similar conditions, Commander. Nearly half our warriors are completely incapacitated. Our medical teams cannot identify the pathogen, let alone treat it. Krostek nodded slowly, trying not to trigger another wave of dizziness. And the human prisoners? They show similar symptoms but remain functional, Shrell reported. Their condition appears to be stabilizing while ours continues to worsen. On the other side of the command room, the 5 human captives sat together under guard. Despite their obvious illness-gray skin, bloodshot eyes, and occasional bloody coughs, they seemed remarkably calm. The Chief Science Officer, Olivia Sanders, even managed a weak smile when she caught Krostek looking at her. Krostek rose from his chair, fighting against the weakness in his legs, and approached the humans. Your Captain Wright spoke of a choice? He said to Olivia. What did he mean? Olivia looked up at him. Protocol Nemesis has 2 phases, she explained, her voice hoarse but steady. The first phase is automatic, the release of the pathogen. The second phase is optional, the cure. There is a cure? Crosstech demanded, new energy in his voice. Of course, Olivia replied. We're not monsters, Commander. We don't want to kill you. We just want to be left alone. Back on the Solitude. Captain Wright and his senior officers gathered in the ship's conference room. The mood was somber as they discussed their next steps. The Vexery ships are maintaining position about 10,000 kilometers from us, Security Chief Allen reported. Their power signatures are fluctuating, suggesting they're having trouble maintaining basic systems. Dr. Nash consulted his medical tablet. Based on the biosigns we're picking up, I estimate they have about 12 hours before the first deaths occur. Another 36 hours after that, and there won't be enough healthy crew left to operate their ships. Captain Wright nodded. And our people on their vessels? Their implanted monitors show they're responding as expected to their protective treatments, Dr. Nash replied. They'll experience discomfort but no permanent damage. Engineer Nicole studied the ship schematics on the main display. We've contained all breach areas and purged the affected sections. The ship is clean, Captain. Wright sat back in his chair and considered the situation. Protocol Nemesis was designed as a deterrent, not as an extinction event. The Vexery need to understand why we travel alone, but they also need to survive to spread that understanding. Are you suggesting we offer them the cure? Allen asked, his expression concerned. That's not standard protocol, sir. No, it's not, Wright agreed. But I believe it's the right thing to do. Lisa spoke up from her seat at the table. The Vexery are hailing us again, Captain, Wright nodded. Let's see what they have to say. The main screen in the conference room activated to show Commander Crosstech. The Vexery leader looked significantly worse than during their last communication. His scales had dulled to an ashen gray, and he seemed to be having trouble focusing his eyes. Captain Wright, Crosstech began, his voice raspy. I wish to propose terms. Wright leaned forward. I'm listening. We withdraw all claims against your vessel, Crosstech said. We acknowledge our error in attacking a human ship, and we request medical assistance for my crew. In exchange, I offer my personal oath that the Vexery Collective will never again target a human vessel. The human captain studied the alien commander for a long moment. Your word alone is not enough, Commander. I need guarantees. What guarantees would satisfy you? Crosstech asked. Complete access to your ship's computer systems, Wright replied. I want all data on Vexery raiding activities in this sector. I want star charts showing your territory and bases. And I want you to broadcast a message to all Vexery vessels, explaining exactly what happened here. Crosstech's vertical pupils narrowed. You ask much, human. I offer life in return, Wright said simply. After a moment of consideration, Crosstech nodded. Agreed. When will you send the cure? I'll send my chief medical officer to your vessel within the hour, Wright replied. He will bring the first treatment and instructions for your medical team to synthesize the rest. When the communication ended, Allen turned to his captain with concern. Sir, sending Dr. Nash to their ship is extremely risky. I agree, Wright said. That's why you'll be going with him, along with the security team. The Vexery need to understand that we're serious about this agreement. Dr. Nash began preparing his medical supplies immediately. He selected several vials containing a clear blue liquid and packed them carefully in a specialized container. Nurse Patrick helped him gather additional equipment for treating the most severely affected Vexery. Do you think they'll honor the agreement? Patrick asked quietly as they worked. They don't have much choice, Dr. Nash replied. Without our help, they'll all be dead within days. Besides, I think Commander Crosstech is smart enough to recognize that humans aren't to be trifled with. 2 hours later, a shuttle from the Solitude docked with the lead Vexery vessel. Dr. Nash, Security Chief Allen, and 4 armed security officers stepped through the airlock and were immediately struck by the conditions aboard the alien ship. Vexery warriors lay along the corridors, many too weak to stand. Those still on their feet moved slowly, as if walking through deep water. A Vexery medical officer met them at the docking bay. Unlike the warriors, the medical staff wore protective suits that had apparently provided some defense against the pathogen. Follow me, the Vexery doctor said without preamble. Our worst cases are in the main medical bay. As they walked through the ship, Alan kept his hand near his weapon, but the vexery they passed showed no signs of hostility. If anything, they regarded the humans with a mixture of fear and hope. In the medical bay, Dr. Nash was shocked by the severity of the symptoms. The pathogen had affected the vexery more strongly than their simulations had predicted. Many of the patients had developed a blue tinge to their normally green scales, and several were unconscious. "I need to start treatment immediately," Dr. Nash told the vexery doctor. "The blue liquid in these vials is the initial countermeasure. It needs to be administered intravenously to all affected crew members." As Dr. Nash began treating the most critical patients, Commander Krostek entered the medical bay. He moved. Slowly, clearly fighting against his symptoms, but his pride kept him upright. "Your Captain Wright said there were 2 phases to your Nemesis protocol," Krostek said to Alan. "The disease and the cure. Is this how all human ships defend themselves?" Alan nodded. "Every human vessel that travels beyond our core systems carries a modified version of the protocol. The specific pathogen varies from ship to ship, but the principle remains the same. And this is why humans always travel alone," Krostek realized. "You're not weak or arrogant as we believed. You're quarantined." "We travel alone to protect others," Alan corrected. "Unless we're attacked, then the isolation protects only us." As Dr. Nash worked to save the vexery crew, Alan established a secure link to the Solitude. Engineer Nicole used this connection to access the vexery ship's computer systems as agreed in their terms. "I'm downloading their navigational data now," Nicole reported to Captain Wright over the communication link. "It appears the vexery have been operating in this sector for nearly 3 years, preying on merchant vessels from at least 6 different species. Any previous encounters with human ships?" Wright asked. "None recorded," Nicole replied. "It seems we were their first attempt," Wright nodded grimly. "And their last, if Commander Krostek honors his word." Back on the vexery ship, Dr. Nash administered the final dose to Commander Krostek himself. "This will counteract the worst effects," he explained. "You'll need 2 more treatments over the next 48 hours, but your medical team can synthesize those using the formula I've provided." Krostek watched as the blue liquid entered his bloodstream. "Tell me, human doctor, is the pathogen always so effective against non-humans?" "It's engineered to be," Dr. Nash replied honestly. "Part of Nemesis protocol involves continuous research into xenobiology. We update our defensive measures regularly." For the first time, Krostek seemed to truly understand the implications of what had happened. "All human ships carry such weapons," he said softly, "and each travels alone." "Now you know why?" Dr. Nash said. 3 days after the initial encounter, the situation aboard the vexery vessels had stabilized. Most of the crew were responding well to the treatment provided by Dr. Nash, though many still showed signs of weakness. The blue medication had stopped the progression of symptoms, and the follow-up treatments were slowly reversing the damage caused by the pathogen. On the Solitude, Captain Wright sat in his ready room reviewing the data obtained from the vexery ships. The information was troubling. The vexery collective was larger and more organized than Terran intelligence had previously believed. Their territory extended through several nearby star systems, and their raiding operations had been growing more ambitious over the past few years. Lisa entered the room with a fresh report. "Sir, Dr. Nash reports that the last treatment has been successfully administered to all vexery crew members. He requests permission to return to the Solitude." Wright nodded. "Granted. Have Security Chief Allen prepare the shuttle for immediate departure." "There's something else, Captain," Lisa continued. "Commander Krostek is requesting to come aboard the Solitude. He says he wishes to speak with you personally." Wright raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Did he say why?" "No, sir. But Dr. Nash believes the request is genuine. He says the commander has been deeply affected by what happened." After a moment of consideration, Wright made his decision. "Tell Allen to bring Commander Krostek back with them. Maximum security protocols, of course." An hour later, Commander Krostek stood in the conference room of the USS Solitude. Despite his improved condition, the Vexry leader still showed signs of his recent illness. His scales had regained some of their natural green color, but remained duller than normal. His posture, once proud and intimidating, was now slightly stooped. Captain Wright entered the room, accompanied by Security Chief Allen and 2 armed guards. Wright took a seat at the head of the table and gestured for Crosstuck to sit opposite him. "Commander," Wright began, "Dr. Nash tells me you're responding well to the treatment." "Yes," Crosstuck replied, his voice still raspy. "Your medical officer is skilled. He has saved many lives aboard my ships." "I'm glad to hear it," Wright said. "Now, why did you request this meeting?" Crosstuck placed his hands flat on the table, a gesture that Allen recognized as a sign of peaceful intentions among the Vexry. "I wish to see for myself," the commander said. "See what?" "A human ship from the inside," Crosstuck explained. "To understand better," Wright studied the alien commander. "And what have you learned?" "That everything we believed about humans was wrong," Crosstuck admitted. "We thought your solitary ships were signs of weakness or arrogance. We saw you as soft creatures dependent on your technology," he gestured around him. "But now I see the truth. You isolate yourselves not from fear, but from caution. Your ships travel alone because each one is a weapon in itself." Wright nodded slowly. "Not by choice, Commander. When humans first ventured into deep space, we traveled in groups like most species. But we quickly learned that our biology made us unique. You were dangerous to others," Crosstuck said. "And others to us," Wright corrected. "Our early encounters with alien life forms revealed that cross-species infections could be devastating to all involved. After several tragic incidents, the Terran fleet established the isolation protocols. And Nemesis? A last resort," Wright explained. "Developed after a human colony was wiped out by raiders who believed isolated settlements were easy targets." Crosstuck was silent for a moment, absorbing this information. "I have upheld my end of our agreement," he said finally. "All data from our ships has been transferred to your systems. I have sent the warning message to all Vexry vessels in this sector." "Yes," Wright acknowledged. "Your cooperation has been noted and appreciated." "There is something else," Crosstuck continued. "I request permission to address the Terran Fleet Command directly." This request surprised Wright. "For what purpose?" "To propose a formal non-aggression pact between the Vexry Collective and the Terran Alliance," Crosstuck said. "What happened here should never happen again." Wright considered the request carefully. Such a pact would be unprecedented. The Vexry were known raiders, not diplomats. Yet the commander seemed sincere. "I will forward your request to Fleet Command," Wright said finally. "But I must warn you, they will require more than just your word." "I understand," Crosstuck replied. "I am prepared to offer territorial concessions and trade agreements as proof of our sincerity." Meanwhile, in the medical bay of the Solitude, Dr. Nash was examining the 5 crew members who had been held captive on the Vexry ship. Olivia Sanders, the chief science officer, sat on an examination table as Dr. Nash checked her vital signs. "All clear," Dr. Nash announced with satisfaction. "Your immune system has fully processed the controlled exposure. No signs of lasting effects." Olivia nodded, relief evident on her face. "It was more intense than the simulations, Greg. I really thought I might be in trouble for a while there." "The Vexry physiology reacted more strongly than our models predicted," Dr. Nash admitted. "Which means we need to update our research. Will the commander make a full recovery?" Olivia asked. "Yes, though some of his crew may have lingering effects for several weeks," Dr. Nash replied. "The important thing is that they'll live and they'll remember what happened." In engineering, Nicole was overseeing the final repairs to the sections of the ship damaged during the Vexry boarding. The breach points had been sealed, and the affected areas thoroughly decontaminated. "All systems back to normal operating parameters," Ben reported from his station. "No trace of the pathogen remains in the ship's environment." Nicole nodded with satisfaction. "Good work, team. Now let's make sure it stays that way." Back in the conference room, the meeting between Captain Wright and Commander Crosstuck was concluding. Wright had agreed to escort the Vexery ships to the edge of the neutral zone where they could safely return to their own territory. "One last question, Captain," Krostek said as they prepared to part ways. "The pathogen, was it truly as deadly as it seemed, or was that part of the deception?" Wright met the commander's gaze steadily. "Protocol Nemesis is designed to incapacitate, not exterminate. The initial symptoms are severe but controllable with the proper treatment." "So it was never meant to kill us?" "That would depend entirely on your actions, Commander," Wright replied. "The cure is always part of the protocol, but whether it's offered—" He left the implication hanging. Krostek nodded slowly. "A clever strategy. Defeat your enemy without destroying them, so they can spread the word of your power." "We prefer to think of it as defensive adaptation," Wright said. "Humans have learned through hard experience that sometimes the best way to avoid conflict is to make it too costly for the other side." As Krostek prepared to return to his ship, he offered a formal bow to Captain Wright. "I will remember what I have learned here, human, and I will make sure others remember as well." After the Vexery commander had departed, Wright called a meeting of his senior staff to discuss their next steps. The mood in the briefing room was cautiously optimistic. "Do you think they'll honor the agreement?" Lisa asked. "I believe Krostek will," Wright replied. "What he experienced here changed him. Whether the entire Vexery collective will follow his lead remains to be seen." Alan looked skeptical. "Sir, with respect, can we trust a species of raiders to keep their word?" "We don't have to trust them, Alan," Wright said. "They just have to fear us enough to stay away from human ships." Nicole smiled slightly. "I'd say Protocol Nemesis accomplished that goal quite effectively." "Yes," Wright agreed. "But I hope it never needs to be used again." As the meeting concluded, Wright remained behind, staring at the star map displayed on the main screen. The Vexery territory was now clearly marked, along with their known bases and patrol routes. It was valuable intelligence that would help protect human ships and colonies in the future, yet Captain Wright took no pleasure in how this knowledge had been obtained. Protocol Nemesis was effective, but it represented a hard truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. They were alone not by choice, but by necessity. 1 month after the encounter with the Vexery raiders, Captain Ethan Wright stood at attention in the Grand Hall of Terran Fleet headquarters on Earth. The room was filled with high-ranking officers and government officials who had gathered for a special hearing about the Solitude incident. The activation of Protocol Nemesis always triggered a mandatory review, and Wright had spent the past week preparing his report and testimony. Admiral Samantha Rivera, head of the fleet's border security division, sat at the center of the review panel. Her expression was serious as she opened the proceedings. "Captain Wright," she began, "your report indicates this was the first confirmed encounter between Vexery raiders and a human vessel. In your assessment, how will this incident affect our relations with the Vexery collective and other species?" "In that sector?" Wright considered his answer carefully. The question touched on matters of interstellar diplomacy that went far beyond his role as a ship captain. "The immediate effect has been positive, Admiral. The Vexery raiders now understand why human ships travel alone, and Commander Krostek has communicated this understanding to other Vexery vessels. We have detected no further Vexery activity near our shipping lanes since the incident." Before Admiral Rivera could ask her next question, the main doors of the chamber opened. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly as a small delegation of Vexery entered the room. At their head walked Commander Krostek, now fully recovered from his illness. His scales had regained their vibrant green color, and he moved with the confident stride of a warrior. "The Vexery collective requests permission to address this council," Krostek announced formally. The panel members exchanged glances of surprise and uncertainty. After a brief whispered conversation, Admiral Rivera nodded. "We recognize the representative of the Vexery collective." Krostek approached the center of the chamber, his gaze sweeping across the assembled humans before settling on Captain Wright. "For generations, we Vexery have considered ourselves the apex predators among the stars. We saw isolated ships as signs of weakness to be exploited. We were wrong." He reached into a pouch at his side and removed a data crystal, which he placed on the table before the Admiral. This contains a formal non-aggression pact, already ratified by the highest authority in our collective. We pledge never to attack human vessels or colonies. Admiral Rivera studied the alien carefully. This is an unexpected development, Commander. What prompted such a significant policy change from the Vexery? Understanding, Krostak replied simply. Humans do not travel in groups not because they cannot, but because they choose isolation to protect others. Every human ship is both sword and shield, a philosophy my people failed to comprehend until now. He turned to face Captain Wright. Directly, the tale of the Solitude has spread throughout our territories and beyond. Many believed humans were soft creatures dependent on their technology. Now they know that evolution on your harsh world crafted you into something far more formidable, a species that weaponized its own vulnerability. We prefer to think of it as defensive adaptation, Wright corrected gently. Call it what you will, Krostak said. The result is the same. Space Raiders now understand why human ships fly alone and none will attack again. As the Vexery delegation departed, Engineer Nicole Harrison approached her captain in the antechamber. That was unexpected, she said quietly. Do you think the non-aggression pact will really make a difference? Wright watched the aliens leave, remembering the fear in Krostak's eyes when he had first understood what Nemesis truly meant. Yes, I believe it will. Not because they respect us, but because they finally fear us for the right reasons. Admiral Rivera joined them, her expression thoughtful. A remarkable outcome, Captain. The diplomatic corps will be analyzing this development. For months? She lowered her voice so only Wright and Nicole could hear. You know, the most effective part of Protocol Nemesis was never the pathogen itself. No, Wright agreed. It was the idea of it. The possibility that any human ship, no matter how isolated, carries something so terrifying that we quarantine ourselves from the galaxy. The pathogen used in Nemesis causes flu-like symptoms in most species, the Admiral continued. Unpleasant, but rarely fatal with proper treatment. The real weapon was always psychological, Nicole smiled slightly. Sometimes the most effective weapon is the one you never actually have to use at full strength. Let's hope so, Wright said, watching as news of the historic Vexery Human Accord spread across the command center displays. Because the galaxy is vast and humans are still very much alone out there. Later that evening, Wright met with his crew at a reception organized to honor their service. The Solitude would soon be heading back to patrol duty with a new assignment, and this might be their last chance to gather together for some time. Lisa approached her captain with a drink in hand. Sir, I just heard that Commander Krostak has been appointed as the official Vexery liaison to the Terran Alliance. It seems your encounter changed more than just raider tactics. Good news travels fast, Wright replied with a small smile. Let's hope this marks the beginning of a more peaceful relationship. Dr. Nash joined them, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks. The research division is already working on updates to the Nemesis protocols based on our encounter. The Vexery. Physiology provided valuable data. Always looking to improve the defensive systems, Greg. Wright asked. That's the job, Dr. Nash replied. Though I admit I'd prefer if they never needed to be used again. Across the room, Security Chief Allen was engaged in an animated conversation with several junior officers. From their gestures and expressions, Wright could tell he was recounting the Vexery incident. Allen seems to be enjoying his new status as a veteran of first contact, Nicole observed as she joined their group. He earned it, Wright said. We all did. As the evening progressed, Wright found a quiet moment to step out onto a balcony overlooking the fleet headquarters grounds. Above him, the stars shone brightly in the clear night sky. Somewhere up there, the Solitude waited in orbit for its next mission. Admiral Rivera found him there, gazing at the stars. Thinking about your next patrol, Captain? Wright nodded. The border doesn't patrol itself. I've been authorized to tell you that your next assignment will be different, the Admiral said. The Diplomatic Corps has requested the Solitude for a special mission. What kind of mission? An escort assignment, Rivera replied. You'll be accompanying a Vexery diplomatic vessel on a goodwill tour of several human colonies. Wright raised an eyebrow in surprise. That's quite a change from Border Patrol. Times are changing, Captain, the Admiral said. And it's largely because of what happened on your ship. The Vexery specifically requested the Solitude for this mission. They said there's no ship they trust more. Trust built on fear, right? Mused. Perhaps initially, Rivera agreed, but it's a start. And who knows? Maybe someday human ships won't have to fly alone anymore, Wright considered this idea. For generations, isolation had been the cornerstone of human space travel policy. The thought of changing that fundamental approach was both exciting and unsettling. One step at a time, Admiral, he said finally. For now, I'll settle for raiders keeping their distance. A wise perspective, Rivera replied. By the way, your crew has been cleared for shore leave until your new mission begins. I suggest you all take some well-earned rest. As the Admiral left, Wright remained on the balcony, contemplating the stars and what lay beyond them. The galaxy was still full of dangers, but perhaps there was now one less threat to worry about. The Vexery had learned why human ships fly alone, and they would spread that knowledge to others. For the first time in his long career, Captain Ethan Wright allowed himself to hope that someday, somewhere, a human ship might safely travel in company with others. It was a small hope, but after generations of isolation, even a small hope felt significant. He rejoined his crew at the reception, grateful for their service and their courage. Together, they had not only defended their ship, but potentially changed the course of human-alien relations for the better. As protocols went, Nemesis had worked exactly as designed. It had created peace through understanding. Even if that understanding had come at a cost, the Solitude would soon fly again alone. As always, but perhaps not forever.